Right. Everybody that you meet that doesn't know you, it's your attitude they meet first. It is your attitude. They've not worked you out yet. They've not worked out what your preferences are. They've not worked out how you're wired, but it's your attitude they meet first. Do you agree? So that led me thinking, I've still started, so I can go here now. That's not just the only start square. It develops. That even the people that do know you, and the people that do know you probably have a handle on how you're wired and your behavioural preferences and your characteristics. But it's your attitude that makes the difference. Because they almost forget or park or put on hold all of the stuff they know about you because they know about you. And your attitude then makes the difference. So having worked this through and thought this through and watched this play out, I've realised that it doesn't matter whether you know nobody or know everybody, your attitude is the single biggest thing that makes a difference. Single biggest thing. And those of you at the launch, these two people at the launch, thank you very much. The little bit of background research, attitude, any aviators in the room? No? That's good. That means I can carry on to my heart's content. So if I'm scientifically poor, you'll never know, and you'll be really happy with this. In aviation, we all know about speed. Sarah's here. Don't tell her what I said. Don't tell her what I said. Sarah, coffee and so on. But the chinos are for you. Somebody will explain to you, Sarah. She's not even listening. She's not even listening. I'm talking. It's my Friday. The chinos are for you. You need to ask somebody how that fits. Yeah, okay. It's your fault. Right. Aviation. Speed is one thing. Altitude refers to the height. And attitude refers to the angle of the plane. You know this, don't you? You want to do science? You know this. Good. Positive nod. Knowledgeable nod. So the attitude, and I remember watching my children as they'd grown up, and when they'd fly an aeroplane, initially they'd take off and they'd land. It would just go up and down, wouldn't it? But then eventually over time, almost intuitively, but maybe because they were budding scientists and they've studied aircraft in the sky, they take off and they land. Because an aircraft's attitude is what delivers the comfort to you, the passenger. So when the attitude of an aircraft is right, its relationship to the conditions is adjusted perfectly. If you've ever had a slightly bumpy landing, and quite often it could be the Ryanair plane because they need to get down on target, so that little have you heard that? Heard that on plane? Which is when they land in time. Oh, well done. You crash down, it's done. They don't care about the attitude. Absolutely. That's a company with attitude. So, don't put that on the video. They might become a client. They won't become a client. So, your experience on an aircraft, the enjoyment of it, the pleasantness of its landing, is about the attitude. It's not just choosing an attitude for the plane on takeoff, and that'll be fine for the full duration of the journey and the landing. It's not. Obviously, the attitude has to shift and blend depending on the wind conditions, the turbulence. Maybe there's sections of weather that they need to avoid. You have a different attitude around different types of weather. So, and you can see where this metaphor is going. As life goes on, you're going to meet various wind conditions and turbulence and weather conditions, or a herd of, not herds of seagulls, are they? A flock of seagulls. Herd of seagulls. I'm going to go with that. A herd of seagulls are coming at you, mooing towards you in flight, and you've got to change your attitude towards them. Otherwise, you have a bad experience and a bad landing. Enough about all that. It was Charles Darwin in 18... any botanists in the room? I'm going to press on with this one as well then, that's good. So, Charles Darwin was the first person in, as far as people can work out, to take the word attitude and apply it to animals, to us. In that he used the expression, the attitude of an animal in certain circumstances was the way in which it held itself, presented itself, how its mood was, how its excitement and temper was, and so on. And from that point, it started to grow. So through the end of the 19th century, 20th century, and now the 21st century. My God, we're in the 21st century. Oh no, we've been here a long time, haven't we? It's amazing the flights of fancy that go off in my head. It's sometimes, some of the events that I speak at, it's so much better to be here than there. It's really good in here. Although, there was one event I did in, when was it, Simon? October. It was October. I said I'm never going to talk about this one again because it hurt. That just didn't go well. I'm not used to that, really. And the circumstances were really curious. There were lots and lots of interruptions, so it just kept catching me off guard. And those of you who've seen me speak before, you know I'll go off on a tangent. So if interruption comes in, often I'll go off on that tangent. There were so many interruptions, my tangents had tangentified, and I was out of camera, I was off shot, and everything changed, and it was a really curious experience. So I realized all I had left was my attitude. So I just needed to keep changing it. It was really interesting. So it was another big learning for me. Enough about that. But confidence, that's what it led me into. I thought, well, my confidence for a few moments during that presentation went boom. Have you ever been in a situation where you've gone in and your confidence is okay, neutral to positive, and things have gone awry? Somebody has said something provocative or nasty to you, or just looks in a foul mood. Maybe they're reading my brochure. No, that's fine. But that's fine. You do what you like. But you know, things they're conspiring to make you feel uncomfortable. Have you ever been in those situations? Well, you've been. So that's some of you. Some of you haven't. Good for you. Well, for the next couple of minutes, I'm not talking to those that didn't nod. I'm just talking to those that did. When that confidence goes awry, what goes on in your head? So say you've come into a table like this, 8 people sitting there, and you're really positive about what you're going to share, and you've got at least half of them, these 4, with faces of glumness. How does that affect you? What goes on in your head? Doubt. Okay, that's the go-to. The first one is doubt. What else comes up? Say again? Okay, another great reaction, which is defensive. So I'm going to dig in here now, and I'm all right. So can you see that the muscle movement as well, when I was trying to portray defensiveness, we get stiffer and tighter necked. So there will be a physical, so often there will be a physical one. So the doubt might not manifest itself physically in how you hold yourself. Defensiveness almost certainly will. Doubt will eventually. How will doubt manifest itself, do you think, in you? You might withdraw. And again, one of the jobs that I'm very lucky to do is I'll sit in on meetings, board meetings, just to observe how everybody interacts. And then my job is to give feedback. And I'm big and ugly and bold. I can say what I bloody well like now. So that situation is, and you see people withdraw, and they withdraw just a bit sometimes. In situations where I've just described this table of the 4 glums, sorry, because you're not, none of you are, but the 4 glums doing that. The withdrawal, you might be withdrawn. And I also see people's shoulders go down, and I see a slight extra curvature of the spine. So people's height is reduced. And this, go back to Darwin, this is what animals do. This is what we do. We are animals. We change our position in relation to what we think is appropriate. So what's happened is our attitude has changed, but not necessarily in the most helpful way. We have reduced ourselves. And then what happens when we start to speak in the meeting of the 4 glums? Say again? Softer, there we go, absolutely, great example. Well used, well delivered. So, softer, potentially. Hesitant? Hesitant. We said that together. Oh, coincidence. So, yeah, so hesitant, maybe. Yes, okay, so now we've gone to the tribal bit, or the core of the brain, the fight or flight, which is the amygdala right in the middle. And then the other bits, can you remember the name of the other bits? Hippocampus, hypothalamus, and prefrontal cortex is the big bit at the front that you want to activate. But what happens when you're in that mode and starting defensive and your attitude is shifting, is the prefrontal cortex effectively gets shut off, and the secretariat part of the brain and then the tribal bit, which you said fight or flight happens, which is fight or flight, I need to get out of here, because look at the glums, or I need to take them on, which is your defensive idea. So if you want to get out of here, what does the body do? This is, I know I'm going. What does the body do physically when the fight or flight kicks in?
Pumps out adrenaline.
Say again?
Pumps out adrenaline.
Adrenaline gets pumped, yes. Heartbeat accelerates. You tense up, back to that stiff neck. So you might stiffen up, heartbeat's accelerating. When the heartbeat accelerates, what then happens? Your breathing changes, and we get tighter in the lung cage. Everything around here tightens up. What happens when you start shallowing your breathing? You're just about to do a presentation to the 4 glums.
You get anxious.
Anxiety kicks in. So it's a mood state. So all of a sudden, from the range of emotions that we might have been travelling from excited and up for it, first entry attitude, we've now potentially shifted to an anxious, anxiety attitude. Okay, so we've got tightness of... We're breathing shallowly. What's happening? Less oxygen, which means panic, you can't think. And the brain then says, because the brain's just an obedient servant, it'll set up whatever you want. The brain goes, this doesn't feel very good. That feels like we're anxious and in panic. So what I'll do is I'll shut down all unnecessary, non-urgent parts of the body, which is liver, kidney function that's not needed right now. Various activities will reduce. I'm going to pump information, oxygen and blood to where? Which muscles?
The ones that help you run away.
The runaway muscles. The runaway muscles. Do you know, in these brown chinos are some runaway muscles. So probably your legs will become nervous. You will get hot. Where do you get hot when you're nervous? Oh, okay. Okay, in that case, just think where you get hot. Don't share it with me, and I'll tell you where I get hot. Yeah. Say again?
Friday morning as well.
It's Friday morning. I know it's Friday morning. We can do whatever we like. It's Friday morning. It's a great weekend ahead. It's here. It's around this middle part, just around about, I guess, that solar plexus sort of area. And it feels like our face because the heat will whoosh, whoosh up here, and also we flush up our cheeks. I'm not sure, this is where the botanist thing runs out, and again, when this video, if this ever gets used, there's going to be a botanist that's going to go, you're wrong, and a comment, so can you cut that bit out as well? So, yes, we flush up for a reason, and I think there is an animal reason why we would have flushed up originally. Maybe it makes us look more angry and threatening. Scary. But that's not the case anymore. Anyway, this is a long way of saying our attitude has shifted because we've had this meeting with 4 glums. We've changed. Link that back to when I was at this event where it was all starting to shift. And I remember there was one person in the room, I think it was a team of about 18, and the one person was, the old arms had folded, the face had shifted, he'd gone beyond glum, he'd gone to whatever the next level is after glum. And I thought, whoa, this is not good. So doubt kicked in. Defensiveness kicked in, anxiety's kicking in. What am I going to do with this? I have to do something with this to rediscover my confidence. So what I was able to do was, okay, well, I'm going to choose the physical attitude first. I'm going to stand the way I stand when I feel comfortable and confident, which is not how I feel at this moment, but I'm going to find what it is. I know what it is. And then I'm going to breathe because my lung capacity had reduced. And maybe you could breathe with me so I don't feel I'm on my own, which is if you fill your stomach up when you breathe, so imagine your stomach is doing, because the lungs themselves aren't a muscle, they're just the diaphragm pieces. Any biologists and medical people? What do you do? I've gone through so many professions and none of you are any of them. Okay, so the lung doesn't do anything. We need to use the diaphragm to pull the muscle up and down. Does that make sense? So if you expand your stomach, you pull the diaphragm down, because the lung itself is lots and lots of, there's a word beginning with A, the endings of where the oxygen goes. Alveoli?
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, so there is somebody with knowledge now. I'm going to get out of this subject quickly. But when you breathe in, quite often what people do is they go and pick your chest up and you fill your chest up. But the lungs capacity that's probably maximum 2/3 of lung capacity by doing that, because you're squashing the lower part of the lungs. By filling your stomach up first, you pull the diaphragm down, you get more lung capacity available to you. You get a bigger deep breath. So you get one of those. In, pause, holding the breath slightly, and out. And I would do that 2 or 3 times, and I'll come back to what that causes too. But you will notice, I think I talked about this in the first one 4 years ago, that when you breathe in now, notice the temperature, breathe out through your mouth now. Conscious of the temperature? Is there a difference? Yeah. There could be as many as 2 or 3 degree difference. So you're breathing in cool, you're breathing out warm. Remember I talked about all the heat in the muscles? In essence, as you got hotter and nervous, the anxiety, the tension, the defense, if you're breathing in cool and breathing out warm, you're reducing your temperature. Do that 3 times. The heat exchange unit, which is you, has started to happen. You will be slightly cooler. And being cool is a good thing. My son told me. So, there I was, I did the breathing 2 or 3 times. The other byproduct of breathing and pausing is what? Gives you time. In fact, you have some time just to collect your thoughts. Even though at the initial part of that, your thoughts may be a little bit crazy because you're in panic, anxiety or whatever. They could be a little bit crazy, but it gives you a little bit of time for maybe some of that to settle. What else? It calms you right down. You do feel some calm, so things just start. The pace of the body's movement of energy and adrenaline and what have you has just started to calm down. What's the impact on you? I'm leading the witness a little bit here, but I'm going to pause now, dramatically, for effect, and I want you to consider what reactions you have in relation to me. What am I causing in you? I am leading the witness because I know what I want you to say. I might as well tell you what I want you to say. I've not even done it yet, and that's a brilliant answer. Thank you very much. And this is coming from the glums. So it enables you to process what I've said. Okay, well, I'm going to pause again now. Here's your prize. It's free-range eggs.
Sorry.
You're welcome. Reaction.
Almost lets you kind of, as me watching, I'm going, it changes my temperament, what I'm thinking, because I'm in this place, I'm in your presentation, and then all of a sudden there's a silence, and I then go, wait a minute, what's going on? And I start to reassess what's happening, what's going on.
Just back in with you.
Brilliant. So you've gone into, oh, okay, here I am. You suddenly have had a moment to go, I'm here. What do I do? I get some choices. So I've given you some choice back, and equally, you potentially have re-engaged with me, even if you didn't want to.
Why has it gone quiet?
Why has it gone quiet? So you've gone into maybe some question mode.
Have I missed something?
Say again, have I missed something? Which some people go into, and I'll come back to that at the end as well. Just before 9 o'clock. Somebody needs to tell me before 9 o'clock because I know that you're going to stand up at 1 minute before 9 because you've got to go. So you're my final clock, but that's too late. So the impact of pausing and breathing is brilliant because it collects your thoughts. It creates what you've just shared has happened for the audience or for you. And potentially, people think you're slightly wiser. That's not me making it up. I've had this feedback before. That even when you don't think you're being stoic and considered and somebody of gravitas, somebody who's got something to say and is prepared to consider what it is that they're going to say, that all comes from simply breathing 3 times and pausing. It's a great thing, and you're only doing it for you. So this is what I did at this event where it started to go wrong. So it just got me back into finding my confidence even when I didn't feel confident. Then I started to move in a confident way. I would always put, as you've seen, I would put one hand in my pocket. When we feel low on confidence, we tend to put both hands in our pocket. Remember that was the last year or the year before we did some standing up stuff? And 2 hands in the pocket feels safe. It feels protected, but it's not. And it gives off a wrong impression. What impression do you get if I'm speaking to you like this?
Not interested.
Maybe not interested, maybe, yeah, I'm not engaged, or whatever. Whereas one hand still works. It still gives me a little bit of a feeling of, okay, a bit of confidence, but I'm still engaged with you. So again, this is all happening when my confidence is not with me. So I'm rediscovering confidence. And then the magic thing that I am going to get you to do now, because there's always some part of you getting involved in this, is what I start to say to myself. Because when you've not practiced, and the repetition, by the way, does this. So if this afternoon you have an incident that really kicks your confidence into the backfield and you need to rediscover it, you need to practice this. You need to rediscover this. You need to go through it again so you rediscover your confidence. But it's what you say to yourself is one of the big triggers, which is when you're low on confidence, what might you say to yourself? I'm asking you about what you would say to you. No, don't say it to me, because it'll hurt.
You might say that you can't do it. Or
I can't do it. I knew I couldn't do it. I knew I'd overstep the mark. One of the most common things I coach on, 4 most common things I coach on, one of which is Imposter Syndrome. So that comes up, you know, Imposter Syndrome, which is, it comes up in a lot of people all the time, which is, am I really good enough? Should I really be doing this? You know, looking behind you and thinking, am I on my own here? Should I, and how Imposter Syndrome manifests itself. You know, I work with some people on boards of directors who, you know, that kicks in all the time. And if you've got Imposter Syndrome kicks in, what does that do? Goes back to where we were a few minutes ago, and the confidence goes down. Even if it's just, I'm exaggerating for emphasis, it might be just that millimetre down, which impairs who they are. Think of the aircraft, their flight is not going to be as comfortable because they've chosen the wrong attitude. What you say to yourself. You might say, I'm not good enough. I shouldn't have worn that shirt. Remember how that plays out? That will trick up because it's in Control-Alt-Delete. It's in your mind. Anything that's in your mind, any programs that are running. We've talked about that before as well. If you do Control-Alt-Delete on a computer, you'll have SVC files and DLL files pop up all over the place. What do they do? Who knows? Are they important? Who knows? Shall I delete them? Who knows? But they're using up RAM. They're using up space. And if your entire processing unit is full of DLLs and SVC, are there anybody in the computer industry in here? It's the end of that subject. So that's what you all do. You all work in the computer industry. Okay. So, what was I saying? Oh, yeah. So what you say to yourself is setting in motion the next version of your attitude. So that led me to think about what do I say to myself most often? So I would like you to take about 10 seconds to consider, how do you refer to yourself? How have you referred to yourself over the last week? What story have you told about you and your world over the last week? Consider what that is. Choose a partner. Decide who is A and who is B. A goes first, and then just say it. Got it? What do you say to? What have you been saying about yourself? How do you describe your story? What's been going on in your world? What's the recurring thought you say about yourself? I am, insert word here. Having thought about that, choose a partner. Decide who is A and who is B. Mix up. You should, no, you've mixed up. Okay, pause. B, I would like you to just take a few seconds just to consider, what's my reaction to what they've just shared? And if you know the person, it's a little bit more difficult because you're probably used to. Remember I said about if you know someone, if you don't know someone, it's your attitude that comes across, so that will have worked here. And if you do know someone, it's their attitude. I want you to see if you can get into how has what they've just shared potentially affected their attitude slightly. Tell them. And it might be up, it might have basically lifted them through situations, or it might have just maybe you bumped along the bottom a little bit more. Be honest, be blunt. We're friends in here. It's a Friday. I'm wearing chinos. Go for it. So you've told them. So potentially, my turn. See, what's happened is, if you wear brown chinos, you lose authority in a room. That's what happens. Next year, if I get invited back, I'll be back in a pinstripe suit, you see. So what you have just potentially shared and just started to tickle at and uncover are some opportunities for you to flip your attitude. So you might have discovered some clues where people's attitude was not quite appropriate. If you're telling yourself a story that's not very good, or the spin you put on your story, or the words you say to yourself, they are not necessarily taking you forward. And then I also saw some smiles and some lightness, so maybe some good stuff came out of this. You can think, actually, the way people put a spin on their story, it's an up. It's not often, because when people are first drawn to coaching, and the coaches in the room, you'll know this, some people are drawn to coaching and they want to sort stuff out. But I started coaching a guy a couple of weeks ago, senior exec in the banking and finance industry, surprise, surprise. And he has this fantastic ingrained habit of purifying his story before he meets anyone else. So if he has a bad journey to work, or he's kicked the cat, or knocked over the milk, or whatever it is in the morning, and until we started talking about it, he didn't even realize he did it. He has this neutralizer almost that just cleans that up. He realizes, is this important? Is this a story I want to share? No. Who do I want to be? Okay, much more upbeat today. And he cleans it out. Brilliant technique. So in essence, he's flipping and cleaning up his attitude all the way through the day. So as a result, no surprise, the feedback from his team is really positive all the time. He's an energy giver. He's an energy provider. He sees the upside in things. It's like, wow, that's so inspiring. Because the rest of us, if we're not careful and we don't build this little filtering process unit, we just go with the ups and with the downs of the world, and ups and the downs of the world. So your flight experience, gone back to aviation because I know there's no one in that industry, is indifferent and up and down. And let me tell you about a person also I'm coaching very recently, and this story might mean something to you. I was working with this lady, and she's been in a growing role for the last several years, and she's brilliant. She's a brilliant engager. She's involved in selling the brand and so on. So her role has just stretched and gone and got bigger and bigger and bigger, and she's traveling the world and meeting people, and she has this trail of administrative destruction behind her, of which some gets picked up by her colleagues, but there have never been many colleagues because the company's grown. Some gets picked up by her when she says, I've just got to do it, and she digs into the Friday admin day, in which she feels dreadful. Attitude, notice. So in asking her to describe her world, she came up with 4 aspects. She said, it's hectic, it's chaotic, hectic in that there's lots going on, it's chaotic in that there's no order, it's just happening all the time, short meetings, long meetings, and so on. It's very stressful, and she feels totally reactive. So her clarity, consistency, purposefulness of her decisions were erratic. I said, how long does that mean? I said, about 18 months, 2 years. I said, does it feel normal? Yeah, that's my normal. So she has brilliantly worked a way of coping with hectic. She's full of beans. she runs a lot, and she's really fit, and so she eats well, so she's got a good health and well-being regime around this. In terms of the chaoticness, she just accepts it. One day she's got a nice notebook, another day she's using a notepad, another day she's writing in her phone. I said, where'd all the notes go? She says, I don't know. I don't know. Because some days, like a surprise, like a birthday present, she'll find some notes. That's really good. And then she'll do something. So in essence, she's perpetuating the situation. And as soon as she said that, I thought, there's a perpetuation going on here. I wonder. And the reactiveness carries on. So we had a conversation. I thought, well, we need to flip this attitude, because the attitude is set up for this series of events. And I just wondered, and I became curious about, is she flying her metaphorical... I will not use the flying metaphor beyond the next few minutes. It's done. But is she flying her metaphorical plane according to the conditions that were, that might be, or that could be? So, are you following me? So I wonder whether any of this is... I'm not saying it's untrue, because when you act and behave in a certain way, the wonderful thing about your attitude is it's magnetic, and it will draw to you the conditions that match your attitude. So if you think the world's a dreadful place, and you drag yourself along like this, probably not looking up very often, the world that you see through this filtered lens is muddy, wet, and full of puddles today. So, but it's not necessarily the case. If you could shift your attitude, well, there's a tiny bit of blue sky somewhere, maybe, and so on. Things can get different. So as I investigated this with her, she was setting herself up to reconfirm. And this is something that I'm really interested in, and I'm sure I'll write more and do more about this, is that we recondition and recalibrate based on yesterday all the time. So the chances are you reproduce yesterday or the prevailing condition over and over again. So the new future that you all really, really want for your business, for yourself, for your relationships, bye, it's all right, is restricted, blocked, or diminished by the fact that you're just reproducing what was. So we've got to shake on out. I said, okay, well, take me to this place, because you've got some new recruits coming in the new year, and the role is going to shift again. I said, okay, well, where is this place? Let's say another 18 months' time. What would you really like your world to be? And you've used, I'm sure the coaches in the room, you've used this. And she said, well, I would be moving more smoothly through the days and through my diary. Okay, get that. What else? Well, I'd probably be a little bit more strategic in the way I go about things. You know, my decisions would be strung together. I'd be thinking always just slightly ahead of the moment I'm in. Okay? And she would be calm as opposed to stressed. Okay? And as we started to uncover more and more of this, and I said, okay, well, what is that like? Is there any evidence today that some of those could work today? And reluctantly, she said yes. Oh, that's interesting. So my challenge to you is think about, that was the conversation you sort of just had, the prevailing conditions have probably set your attitude up to be the way it is. And if you're not careful, it becomes ingrained and it becomes habitual. All of a sudden, you're, last time, flying your aircraft because, oh yeah, there might be a herd of seagulls. There might be. So I'm going to fly like that, whatever angle you'd fly at if there were a herd of seagulls. I'm going to fly like this for a while. And all of a sudden, that is now normal. And something magical about the airplane. The seagulls go, do you know what? Come on, herd. We can fly really close to the aircraft because he's already flying like that. So the seagulls come up there, and you go, there you go, there's the seagulls. What led to the thing? You see what I did there? That was clever, wasn't it? All on herd of seagulls. So you could change it. And I've got one, you're not shifting yet, so it must be close to 9 o'clock. 5 to, okay, I'm nearly there. I mentioned Imposter Syndrome as a big one I work on. And that's something to, and there's loads of help to get you through it, which is not true. You're all going to achieve whatever you want. Your attitude, I think, is going to be the link that will get you to there. The other two, just for information that I come across, and I'm sure this comes up in your world too, are FOMO, fear of missing out. As much as we joke about it, and it's in common parlance, we now say, oh, God, a bit of fear of missing out here. It plays out in all sorts of commercial sense. It plays out probably in you. There's a sense of, should I be in that meeting? Should I be on that email chain? This should thing. Shut up with the shoulds already. So fear of missing out needs to be unpicked. Get rid of that, because that affects your attitude. And the other one that I've uncovered or noticed and seen and worked with people a lot is FIFF, FIFs, which is fear I've forgotten something. And in the Keep It Simple book, there's one in there, one of the chapters in there called Have I Left a Pan of Milk on the Boil? Which is what we as a family always used to say. When you set off on holiday, driving on holiday, you go, wait, have we left a pan of milk on the boil? Which was the silly way of saying, have we forgotten something? But that runs through. People have this fear I've forgotten something. So I see people when they are in presentation, when they're with clients, when they're getting ready to go to a meeting, go to work, they have this nerve-wrenching fear I've forgotten something. Have I forgotten the right things in my bag? It's like, calm down. You need to neutralize all these things. And the final one that comes up, and particularly with millennials, I didn't say which millennia, did I? But particularly with millennials, is constant partial attention. You know this? But it's affecting us too. CPA, constant partial attention. I'm definitely going to do something around on this one, which is I notice how constant partial attention means that people aren't fully present here now. You can see it, and I see it in people's eyes, because they're thinking, nearly 9 o'clock, I've got a call with my boss, or fear I've forgotten something, or am I an imposter, and so on. They're all playing out the constant partial attention. And one of the single biggest causes, and it's a big challenge for you, is your mobile phone and your relationship to it. And I've realized, particularly for me, how my relationship with my mobile phone has really, really hurt me over this year. And it's only when something significant happens that you suddenly have the jolt. Think, whoa, I need to do something about this. And I have. And even though I'm not jolting you, I'm going to potentially do a soft jolt. A little bit like the glums. They're not too unhappy, they were just slightly glum. So the soft jolt is, today, I challenge you to go into your settings and turn off all notifications.
Done that yesterday, was on it.
So nothing happened on it. Actually, on mine too, on O2 too. No, nothing went. Anyway, but do that. Because what I notice about people, when they really want to be themselves and fully present and show up and use their attitude filter so they can flip their attitude whenever they want, is the buzz in your pocket or the message from instantly changes your mood. And this is step 1. Step 2, 3, 4, 5, if you do what you like, and I'm going to change your relationship to my telephone, which is, can you be without it for extended periods of time? By extended periods of time, I don't mean minutes. I mean days. I know. And I'm going to see what I can do here. And the wonderful thing about yesterday, on O2 and EE network, I went down yesterday morning for several hours. And I caught myself, just kept looking, bashing my phone even harder. Said, what's going on? Rebooting it and so on. It's like, it's okay. This is a gift. This is a gift. But the phone is the single biggest disruptor to your attitude. You get to choose your attitude, and you get to keep choosing it. So at least for this weekend, may I have awakened your attitude choice. So even if you meet the Glum 4, they're obviously a girl band. It's going to be a girl band. The 4 Glums. Even if you meet them, it doesn't make any difference because your attitude resilience is there. Thank you very, very much.